But a lot of busy things going on in politics this week. Yep, and the host of the WGN Political Report, Paul Lisnek, is here. Let's start, I guess, at City Hall. The mayor asking the CPS CEO to resign. There's been tension between the two, mostly of a fiscal nature here. Where do you think that this is all going to end? I mean, they just put forward their 5-year strategic plan this week.
So I've had some conversations with some folks at City Hall, and my understanding is, first of all, that did happen. That is to say, because there's some question, did the mayor really ask him to step down? And that, for me, has been verified. Yes, it did. But secondly, the end result appears to be he will have to step down. That ultimately the mayor, who doesn't have the authority to fire him, but he does have the authority to tell the CPS, the board, what to do, that ultimately the board is going to have to let him go. It'll be pretty much orders of the mayor.
But this is while negotiations are going on.
Yeah, it's not a great time for all this kind of stuff. So, but that may be an impetus if that's the case. We know the CTU wants Martinez out, so maybe that would be a boost to help them sort of get along. That remains to be seen. We'll probably know sooner than later because, as you say, Ray, those negotiations are going on.
Yeah.
All right, another big topic this week, ShotSpotter. Wednesday, there was this huge city council vote, this ordinance that passed. For those who didn't catch that, what did that ordinance specify?
So what they passed, at the dismay of the mayor, was the opportunity for the superintendent, Larry Snelling, for him to decide whether or not that system would be kept. Essentially, the majority of the alders want that system kept in place. The mayor's position is, I promised I would get rid of it as a campaign promise. He's also facing budget issues. And secondly, is there a substitute for it? All those things are probably going on. He's also probably concerned, the mayor is, of his own power and influence as mayor. I think it may be all of those things together. But the bottom line of what's going to happen here is that Sunday night, midnight, it's going to shut down. Whether or not there is a court battle that happens, I know alders don't want to do that, but that is an opportunity for them. Right now, the mayor is vetoing the decision. He basically says the council has no power. He's going to veto it. The question is whether the council has the votes to override that veto. They had 33 at the other vote. They need 34 to override him. There were 3 votes not there before, but a veto vote, folks, is different than voting for or against the ShotSpotter system. Now they're going against the mayor. We'll see what they do. It's going to be hard to predict.
And now Snelling, I saw him at a vigil on Wednesday night. He had no comment on this update. Were there to be an override, though, that really puts him in an awkward position to make this decision because the mayor is really his boss. So would he go against him? Yeah,
that's a really great situation. This is politics at its best, really. That's really what you're talking about. Yeah. If they override, first of all, there may still be a court challenge to that. Whatever will happen, but that's going to take time. And Snelling may take the position of saying, look, this is what the council did. I have to do what the council has passed. And remember, the city of Chicago has theoretically a strong city council and a weak mayor. We've just never known it to be that way. But this may be the first really significant challenge for the city council to exercise its wings. You could probably count on 1 or maybe 2 hands the number of times the city council has vetoed the mayor. Go back to the time of Richard Daley. It just doesn't happen.
These are interesting times. Let's broaden the topic here. Talk about the presidential race.
Sure.
This week, the vice president had a 90-minute forum with none other than Oprah Winfrey. I want to ask, do you think this puts some political win behind the vice president against Donald Trump, or is it already part of her audience, her base that was in the audience?
I think with that question, Ray, I think it's her base that was already there. Meryl Streep tuned in, that kind of thing. In addition to see it, I watched it because I watch all Trump's rallies. I watch all this stuff. And but you had to have signed up for it, or they did run it on Instagram. You could have caught it that way. And a couple of the cables stepped in for a little bit to take it.
Do you think it was limited?
So, yeah, what I'm saying is I don't know what the exact numbers are. I don't know that we know that yet, but it certainly wasn't, something that was carried over all the networks and that kind of thing. Nevertheless, it's a good thing because what it does say is she's finally talking. Those were interview questions. Those were viewers or other people. They weren't all Meryl Streeps out there. There were some regular folks who asked her some questions about gun violence and other issues.
Immigration?
And immigration absolutely came up. Of course, one of the interesting lines that she said was, yes, I'm a gun owner. If somebody breaks into my house, they're going to get shot. She then went on to say, I probably shouldn't have said that. She knows exactly what she was saying. Yeah. And when she's in a battle to sort of defend the Second Amendment and with Republicans and Trump saying she's after your guns, she knew what she was saying.
Sure.
In terms of doing that. So I don't think she'll have to backtrack on that. But I think it's a smart thing for her to do. She's got to keep doing these interviews. She's got to sit down with the press. She's got to sit down with reporters. That was a love affair. and it's time to now face some tough national reporters.
And in these presidential races, there are obviously a lot of endorsements that we're hearing about. A big one, the Teamsters National Union has chosen for the first time in decades not to endorse either.
And that's what's big about it.
Right.
They have endorsed the Democrats every term since 1996. And so some are looking at this and saying, well, this is a good thing for Trump because they didn't endorse Harris. That may be one way to look at it. Some people are saying, well, no, it's a good thing for Harris. They didn't endorse Trump. But here's the bottom line. With the final decision to not, after so many decades, support the Democrat, what does that really mean? Now, I will tell you the head of the Teamsters has said, look, we've polled our members and it was 60% Trump and 37% or so Harris. A vice president of the Teamsters Union said, yeah, but just before that, the numbers were very different. It was the other way around. So part of the explanation is we're not trusting the numbers that we're seeing. And so that was the reason we couldn't go forth and do it. By the way, if that's the case, they didn't trust the numbers, they shouldn't have come out with either one. But both those Teamsters have said, look, here are the things the Biden-Harris administration has and likely would do in the future for Teamsters. Donald Trump has a very different position on it. Right now, there's a lot of local support amongst Teamsters, but they're free to do what they choose to do.
Still on topic here, we have to talk about North Carolina. Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson running for governor there.
What is he thinking?
He's denied the Holocaust. Sandy Hook called himself a black Nazi, endorsed by Trump.
Said he'd like to own slaves, by the way, if he could.
It's incredible. So my question is American politics gotten to the point of such desensitization, or do you think that this actually will go on to hurt Trump in a battleground state like
10 years ago, he could have never even been a candidate, right? So lots has changed since then. It's interesting that his defense seems to be this is all AI. Now, how it is they went back to 2000 and whatever and all this became AI, I'm not sure how that's going to fly. But here's the thing. We live in strange times. So will it hurt him? Yeah, Robinson, he'll probably lose. It would be a shock if he didn't. The question is, will it hurt Trump? Look, nothing shifts Trump supporters. So the bottom line is you would look and end up saying, that Trump didn't do it, he did that, so you can see split tickets. One would argue that in a normal time, that people would say, look, if Trump is behind him. And here's the thing. Trump is going to North Carolina tomorrow. We'll probably try and find a way to say I don't support him. But it's going to be tough because the Harris campaign is already running all sorts of things with Trump saying, I love this guy.
But he said he's not invited to the rally tomorrow.
Yeah, well, he said he's not going, but you're right. He's not invited. He was disinvited by the Trump team.
So he's distancing himself a bit.
Absolutely.
Okay, you want to tell us about the show coming up?
Yeah, so this weekend we're going to carry on some of this conversation. I'm going to be joined by Congressman Mike Quigley because a shutdown is ahead next week in Congress. By the way,
again.
Shock alert. I don't think it's going to happen. They're too close to an election. And Alderman Brian Hopkins, who's been very vocal about this whole ShotSpotter thing, he's going to join me. We're going to talk about the power of the mayor and what might likely happen, that kind of thing. And keep your eye on somebody like Hopkins because one day I think he probably wants to be mayor too.
We'll see.
All right, good one to follow.
Thank you. Have a
Paul.
great weekend.
Thanks, Paul.
Have
You
a good
too.
night.